But I've noticed a shift with the newer threads. Fans have started noticing that many teams have lore exactly like this.
We hear the same story about countless players on every team with zero evidence. Go to any team sub of any league of any sport, and they'll have their version.
This is the story every time a player left.
Every city and every sport in the world has these stupid rumors.
And the fans making these posts are right. These rumors are everywhere. If you're into sports, you might have even heard a few. In 2016, the Sportster published a listicle with the headline, 12 NHL players who allegedly slept with a teammate's wife. The Canucks rumor? It's in there. Kirk told me that even the current 2024 hockey season had a rumor like this.
It's everywhere. That's everywhere. And it's like, come on, man. I mean, it's just ridiculous when you start throwing this kind of stuff out.
It's been 3 decades since the rumor was born. Another Stanley Cup run is on, with underdogs and heavyweights, hopefuls and favorites. The Canucks made it into the playoffs again, and again exited before making it to the finals. Jane told me this kicked off renewed whisperings about her.
It's still alive. You know, it's like some weird thing living in the New York sewer system.
For almost 30 years, she's had to try and read strangers' faces to see if when they hear her name, if they're thinking about the rumor. And so she's spent a lot of time thinking about the rumor, trying to make sense of it.
This is an absurdity. But it makes me question, what is it in human beings that needs this type of narrative?
On the one hand, she knows the answer is simple.
Because it's sensational. It involves sex and sports.
On the other, she thinks there are very specific reasons rumors like this one keep coming down on the wives. Why people have come down so hard on her. Because it's not like sports are the only place where this kind of scapegoating happens. Just ask Yoko Ono.
You are being judged, and you are being judged, because we judge women very harshly.
I don't know if Jane was always a philosopher, but this experience has made her one. She's become a scholar of scarlet letters.
Well, Bertrand Russell was the guy who said that no one gossips about other people's secret virtues. But we do love to talk trash. We should, I think, however, be careful when it comes to piling on when the rumor is salacious and when there's no capacity or proof. You can choose how you respond to something. And I've chosen to be edified by this. I'm not a victim. I'm someone who's had a front row seat at some of the core dynamics of humanity.
This is Storylines. I'm AC Rowe. This episode was written, reported, and produced by me. It was story edited by Willa Paskin and Evan Chung of the podcast Decoder Ring. Decoder Ring is a show all about cracking cultural mysteries. It's put out by Slate magazine. You can and you should find them wherever you listen to the Storylines podcast. Storylines is produced by Craig Desson. The show is part of the CBC Audio Doc Unit. I'm AC Rowe. Keep your stick on the ice.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world, staying on top of stories around the globe, and connected close to home. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want and where you want on Canada's news app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC Listen app.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 17 degrees with mostly clear skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. A man has died after he was stabbed yesterday at Kennedy Street on Sargent Avenue. It happened just before noon near Sister McNamara School. Winnipeg police say they'll be releasing more information on that homicide investigation at 1 o'clock, along with a police shooting which blocked traffic last night on Arlington Street near Notre Dame. They will also release information on a carjacking incident in the 100 block of Smith Street. Federal Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Anandasangari supports the search of the Prairie Green landfill, but he wonders why Winnipeg police didn't do it sooner. The province has announced a plan to search the landfill for the remains of Mercedes Myron and Morgan Harris. It comes more than 2 years after they were killed by admitted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky. Anandasangari says it's been a long time for the families to wait.
I do believe that in this case the police could have done the search, and I think for the family to go through this traumatizing experience over the last year and a half, I think it's quite problematic. So I do believe that we're in the right place right now, and hopefully this will have some closure for the families.
Anandasangari says the families have been through a traumatizing trial, and the search will be challenging as well. The federal government is providing $20 million of the $40 million so far allocated for the search. Mediators say they're hopeful a United Nations-backed ceasefire proposal will come to fruition. The White House says most of the changes Hamas wants are minor, but others stray from previous agreements. As Julia Wong tells us, the U.S. Secretary of State is in the region, stressing the need for a lasting end to the war.
Some of the changes are workable, some are not.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken confirms Hamas has brought forward several changes to the ceasefire proposal. And until those are resolved, he says the war will drag on. But Blinken is persevering, saying he and other mediators are determined to bridge the gaps.
In the days ahead, we are going to continue to push on an urgent basis with our partners, with Qatar, with Egypt, to try to close this deal, because we know it's in the interests of Israelis, Palestinians, indeed, the entire world.
Blinken says in the coming weeks, Washington will also be putting forward plans for a post-war Gaza, including governance, security, and reconstruction. He insists Hamas won't be allowed to decide the future of the region. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has long resisted any plan that would keep Hamas in power. Julia Wong, CBC News, London.
The city of Calgary has released a timeline for the steps needed to fix a major water main break. Mayor Jyoti Gondek says it'll take 2 days to replace the ruptured pipe and another 3 to fill and flush the feeder main, and a further 2 days to fill underground reservoirs and tanks. Meanwhile, Gondek says water restrictions will remain in effect through the weekend and into next week.
It's critical. It is absolutely our source of life, and that's worth the sacrifices that all of you are making. Everything you're doing matters, and it matters for all of us. So yes, we will have more days of cutting water use, and yes, we will have a clean and safe water supply into the future.
1.6 million people in Calgary and surrounding communities are affected by the water main break. The final expedition ship, owned by the celebrated explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton, has been discovered around 80 kilometers off the coast of Labrador. On Sunday, a search team led by the Royal Canadian Geographical Society located the Quest on the ocean floor. David Mearns is one of the team members.
We'll be very excited for the second phase of the expedition, which is to actually photograph and visually document the shipwreck and the artifacts in an archaeologically sensitive, non-disturbance matter.
Mearns says the ship's towering mast is no longer in place, but he says sonar images are showing the ship appears to be largely intact. Shackleton was on his way to explore the Antarctic when he died aboard the Quest in 1922. The ship was retooled and sank on a sealing expedition in the early 1960s. And it wasn't any ordinary walk through the forest for a group of Manitoba Red River Métis. The CBC's Rosanna Hempel went along on the journey to learn about foraging.
They'll spew their spores and you step on them and they go poof.
From sage to yarrow, this group spotted dozens of edible and medicinal plants meaningful in Métis culture, with the help of Red River Métis herbalist Dana Wood.
My goal is to help teach people keep that traditional knowledge going so that they can pass it on to their family members.
More than 20 people scoured the trails and woods of Bel Air Provincial Forest. They found berries.
They use those juniper berries to spice the wild meat, and it takes some of the wild gamey taste out.
And they learned to identify plants, including dogwood.
This was traditionally used by the Indigenous people for pain medication.
Michelle Poirier says it's helping her connect with her mother's culture.
I did not grow up like that.
So the yarrow, sage, red clover.
That's what MMF's Joanne Remillard hoped for participants.
It's also getting back to our culture, our roots.
Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Bel Air Provincial Forest.
In Winnipeg, we have good foraging weather. We have a late afternoon risk of a thunderstorm, but mainly sunny and a high of 23. In Brandon, a risk of a thunderstorm, a mix of sun and cloud, a high of 24. Dauphin, a chance of showers or a thunderstorm, a high of 18. And Flin Flon, a mix of sun and cloud with a high around 19 degrees. Right now, you are listening to CBC Radio 1.
Hello, my friends. Thanks for joining us today for Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on your CBC Listen app, on your CBC News app, or on CBC's YouTube channel, CBC Manitoba on YouTube. Coming up today on the program, we're going to hear from a Manitoba farmer who shares his experience about how he's managed living with anxiety and depression. And we're going to ask you a question today in our call-in. The city of Winnipeg is looking for help deciding how to replace Pego. It wants to modernize its bus fare collection system. In our call-in conversation, we're asking, what problems have you had with Pego? And what else needs to be modernized about transit? But we begin today with a major police operation. Three police services. 21 suspects arrested over 2 days in Brandon. It was called Project Blockade, and it targeted sexual exploitation. I spoke with Sergeant Dana McCullum of the Brandon Police Service this morning to learn more.
During the weekend actually of June 7th and 8th, 2024, Brandon Police, the RCMP, and the Winnipeg Police Service counter-exploitation units joined forces and entered into a joint forces operation to combat sexual exploitation in the city of Brandon.
Was this something that you guys had planned for quite a while?
It was something that we had planned for several months, yes.
So this is part of an ongoing investigation?
Yes, we have done projects like this before. I believe our first one was actually in 2019.
Does the fact that the RCMP and Winnipeg Police were involved mean that part of the investigation perhaps stretches into their territory?
No, actually, it was just focused in Brandon. Winnipeg Police Service has actually been conducting these types of investigations for several years, and we were learning from them. And then I believe it was last year the RCMP came on board with us as well.
So what actually unfolded on that weekend in June, or those days? Was the 8th and 9th, you said?
Yes. So over the course of the 2-day operation, police arrested 21 adult males. They were between the ages of 21 to 66. They were arrested for obtaining sexual services for consideration. And they are all set to appear in court November 4th, 2024.
Were you expecting to arrest that many suspects?
Actually, this is the third time we have done this project, and that's always our number, either 20 or 21 each time we do it.
It's the third time?
Yes.
Are there different residences that have been the focus of these three different investigations?
We just kind of focus on our downtown streets and some of our local hotels.
Would they be the same hotels?
No, the hotels we actually change up.
Okay. But this is a problem you've been tackling for a while now in Brandon.
Yes, unfortunately it is, and that's why we joined forces to combat the issue.
You mentioned as well in the police release that I received that there was online sexual exploitation happening. What can you tell me about that?
Yes, and that was part of when we were working in our hotels to catch people that were trying to purchase sex in the hotels as well.
So would this be that people would make contact online? Is that how it was online?
Yeah, contact was established online, and then they were arrested when they met in person.
Would the investigation then have entailed officers posing as sex workers?
We don't want to reveal too much of our techniques that we use in these investigations, so I won't comment too much further on that.
Okay. 21 males. It just seems like it seems like a large number.
It does, yes. And like we said, this is the third time we've done it and always come up with that number. I actually think if the project went for several more days, we would just increase those numbers.
Why do you think it persists? I mean, what can we do to change things and make it safer for sex workers, perhaps?
I think maybe people need to realize that this is a form of sexual exploitation. It's an abuse of someone's position of vulnerability. Usually the position that the workers are taking, can be addicted to drugs or experiencing homelessness, and you're taking advantage of their vulnerability. That's not the way to be helping them to offer to buy sex from them.
All of the accused were released by way of undertaking as mandated by the criminal code. Would the Brandon Police Service have liked to have other powers at its disposal?
That's usually the option that we use and that's given to us. It's up to the courts to decide the punishment on that.
How closely does the Winnipeg, or forgive me, that was habit to say Winnipeg, the Brandon Police Service work with perhaps grassroots groups trying to find other ways to help the people who may be exploited in the sex trade?
We actually have a lot of different organizations in Brandon we like to partner with, and we communicate very frequently about the issues that are going on in our downtown. And yeah, we seek advice from them regularly on what's happening and get the information from them and try to combat it the best we can.
There once was a time when the workers themselves would have been the ones arrested. The focus has very much changed. What happens? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, basically, Bill C-36 came into effect in 2014, which made the purchase of sex illegal in Canada. So the focus now is on the person that's purchasing the sex as opposed to punishing the person that's selling it.
So what follow-up happens now with the person who's selling?
Obviously, if we come across them, we're trying to make sure that they're connected to resources. Some may not wish to have any assistance from us at all. With just each case, we play it by ear.
Sergeant McCallum, what message do you have for Manitobans as we leave this conversation today?
Basically, if you see anyone that you're concerned about or have any issues with this going on in your community, please report it to your local police force.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Brandon Police Service.
Your local news at your fingertips.
CBC News has a local news app made for your phone or tablet.
So don't waste time scrolling for the local stories you want. Just download the app to get the information that matters to you when it happens.
And how you want it.
Another way to get your local news. The CBC News app. Download it today.
It is 12:14. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Janet Stewart. You heard it in the news yesterday. The city of Winnipeg is looking for a consultant to hire to help it choose a new and better way to collect bus fare. Does that sound like money well spent? What's wrong with PAYGO, the system we have now? Is there a better way to pay for bus fare? Join our call-in conversation today after the 12:30 news and weather. We want to hear your stories about Winnipeg Transit. Also ahead today, we're going to meet a Manitoba farmer, a former farmer. In fact, he calls himself the recovering farmer. He shares his experience about how he's managed living with anxiety and depression and why he needs to recover from his life in agriculture. We'll meet Jerry Friesen in just a few minutes. First, though, let's take a look at your forecast. In Winnipeg, we're sitting under mainly sunny skies, but we still have the risk of a severe thunderstorm late this afternoon. Our high temperature today will be 23 degrees and a fairly light wind, which is nice for a change. It's been quite windy lately. Tonight will be partly cloudy. Again, the risk of a severe thunderstorm for the evening. Tomorrow, mainly sunny and 21 degrees. Thursday night, mainly clear and 10. Friday, mainly sunny and looking at a mix of sun and cloud for your weekend in the Red River Valley. Riley Lachuk will join us after the 12:30 news with more on your Manitoba forecast. Jerry Friesen has been many things so far in life: a son, a brother, husband, a father, a grandfather. He's been a pork farmer, a speaker, and a conflict management expert. Now, he's also an author. Jerry Friesen, thank you for joining us today by Zoom.
Thanks for having me, Janet.
I haven't logged in yet, so I apologize that you can't see me. It's like good old-fashioned radio.
Technology at its best.
I tell you. Well, this is a human error because I didn't log in, but there you go. Your book is called The Recovering Farmer. So how's the recovery going?
Well, like I suggest in my book, Janet, and I've told lots of people this, is that the recovery carries on. It's an ongoing journey, and it's a matter of managing it and finding my way through that labyrinth I talk about.
Yes, that labyrinth. The subtitle of the book is A Journey Through the Labyrinth of Anxiety and Depression. Why do you call it a labyrinth?
Well, because, and I know there's different definitions for labyrinths, Janet, but certainly the way I see it, it's can be a complex, sometimes confusing pathway that we follow. You're never quite sure where you're at in your progress, and so that's why I call it that, because that certainly is what my journey has been like. I travel that labyrinth. I'm very happy to be able to say that I've got people that join me on that journey, and so I carry on with the journey.
Is there hope in this journey?
Absolutely. I know that at times certainly it feels hopeless. It has felt very dark in times past. But I've learned a lot of things over the last number of years. I've learned to connect dots. I've learned to understand my mental health. I've learned what I need to do, how I need to be vigilant and diligent, and using the tools that are available to make my life better.
Is talking about it one of your tools?
That question, Janet, actually almost makes me emotional, because I've preached this since 2010 when I first started talking about it publicly, that talking about it is the most helpful thing I've experienced, and whether that's with family, with friends, with neighbors. I know in a particularly dark period back in 2005, I was going to the hog barn and a neighbor dropped by. He knew I wasn't in a good place. And so he just asked me how I was doing. And you know how we often respond, right? I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm plugging along, whatever that may be. But for some strange reason that morning, I opened up. He sat and listened. He normalized and validated my feelings. And that gave me the encouragement to face another day. In fact, to face a lot of the issues that I was dealing with at the time. So, yes, I'm a very strong proponent of talking about it.
What did your friend, your neighbor, do so right that day? Because, sometimes getting into these conversations with people, we feel like, I don't have the training. I'm not a psychologist. How am so maybe you don't ask, or you have, what did they do so right that was helpful?
He listened without judgment. He normalized and validated. He didn't provide any answers for me that day. But he was that listening ear that I needed. It was a safe conversation. I felt safe. I felt like I could open up, and he was there for me.
And he didn't have to give you any advice?
No, none at all. Not at all. And what I often say, Janet, is when we have these thoughts rolling around in our heads, when we're able to verbalize them, we actually, sometimes when words start coming out of my mouth, I go, what? Reason you were actually thinking that? What a dummy, because a lot of the stuff going on in our heads isn't real. And so when we're able to verbalize it, number one is we find out what's not real. But number two is also that we can then separate out what's not real and deal with the stuff that is real. And to have someone sitting there and listening and not judging and normalizing and validating is just so awesome.
Anyone who's watching us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream will have noticed by now that I'm wiping tears away. I live with depression, and so did my dad. And I just wish that he'd had, because clearly he was older than you, but he was a farmer from Prince Edward Island, became an RCMP officer, so probably had some post-traumatic stress disorder from stuff he saw early in his career, and didn't talk about it,
Yeah.
And that stigma that we've been trying so hard to get rid of as a society. We talk about mental health all the time now. Why does it linger, do you think?
Because I think what I've noticed over the years, Janet, is that people still have this idea that they're the only ones that are dealing with it. They don't understand the fact that they're not alone. And so it makes it very, very difficult for them to come out of that. And there again, I talk about it in my book, particularly on the addictions piece. I had an alcohol dependency issue. And my family, I call it, they invited me out of the closet. And with that, they were willing to walk with me. And so even with that, even in spite of everything I knew, everything I've learned over the years, I still felt myself being in a closet because I didn't want to necessarily face what was out there, but also because I thought I would be met with judgment and with criticism and been told to, pull up your socks and be better because you can be better. And that's not helpful. And so when people invite me to talk about it and not again to be, of course, there's a lot of mistakes I made. There's a lot of things they could be judgmental about, but there's been so many friends, family out there that weren't like that. And rather they sat with me and listened to what I had to say and come to an understanding of why I am the way I am.
It is interesting, part of aging. I love that analysis of going, the stuff you learn about yourself when you really take the time to let yourself think clearly. You say your recovery is a daily journey. How so?
Yep. There's mornings, and I at my book launch on Monday, for example, I referred to Sunday morning when I woke up, and I quite frankly wasn't sure why I would get out of bed. There are those periods, and I know now, I'm well aware of the fact that they will come. I know it may last for an hour, it may last for a day. But I know it's not forever, and I know that the following day, then at least, or in an hour or two, the sun will shine again, and I will feel the warmth.
Your book, The Recovering Farmer, struck me. How much do you think your occupation as a pig farmer may have contributed to the journey you're on today?
It contributed a lot, Janet. I was diagnosed in 2004, so that's 20 years ago now. I now know that I had some of this when I was growing up, when I was a teenager. I grew up in a fundamental Mennonite home. I know that contributed to my mental health, but I also went through some significant stressors on the farm, and we had ultimately we had to quit farming because we just simply weren't financially sustainable, but dealing with that on a daily basis. And I often say to people, it's not necessarily the things we can control that push us towards the abyss, but rather it's things outside of our control. And as farmers, there's so many things. And it seems like on an annual basis that there's more and more things that we can't control. And so when we can't control these things, it drives us, it creates anxiety, and ultimately that can lead to further issues.
So what do you say to anybody who's out there right now at a stressful time at seeding? They're working so hard and there's things they can't control in the season to come. What do you say to them about taking care of themselves?
I say first and foremost, find someone you can talk to. That's ultimately what my first word of advice is. I also tell people that not to shy away from seeking help from a professional. I was a co-founder of the Manitoba Farmer Wellness Program, which provides free counseling for farmers, their families, and employees. One of the key issues with that was that we retain the services of counselors that have an in-depth knowledge of agriculture. And I sometimes say, well, farmers, yes, as farmers, we're special, but we're not necessarily more special than other occupations, but we do have unique stressors. And so I could tell you stories about my own seeking help from professionals, and I've seen lots of them over the years, but there were those that did not understand my occupation, and because of that, were not at all helpful to what I was dealing with.
Jerry Friesen, thank you for talking with us today and for all the talking you've done over the last 14 years. It's doing the rest of us a lot of good, or the last 20 years.
Well, I appreciate that, Janet. I really do. And like I say, talking about it has really helped me, because when we talk to each other, we learn from each other, and we learn how to better navigate life.
Jerry Friesen is the author of The Recovering Farmer. You can order the book through Friesen Press or through jerryfriesen.ca, and that's Jerry with a G.
Only when the news is known, you can decide to hold a vision for a new home, turn away the cold. You'll make it back slowly. Moving on has never left you lonely, 'cause nothing's more wasteful than moving with the same mess again. Only when the sadness ends, you can begin to mend. Placing your heart that knows that only you will find your way around the bend. You'll make it back eventually, 'cause moving on has never left you lonely, and nothing's more wasteful than moving with the same mess again. And when the seasons change, only one thing remains: comfort never lasts, strange things do pass. You'll make it back slowly. Moving on has never left you lonely, and nothing's more wasteful than moving with the same mess again.
From Montreal, that's Mabel with Rebloom. Beautiful song. All right, it's time for our call-in conversation. We want you to join us. Let us know what you think about Winnipeg looking for a new bus fare collection system to replace Pego. What problems have you had with Pego? What do you think would work better instead of the system they have now to make your ride go more smoothly. What else needs to be modernized about transit? The number to call, 780-0893. That's 780-0893. Now, it's time for the news.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 20 degrees, mostly clear skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. The federal Crown Indigenous Relations Minister says he fully supports the search of the Prairie Green landfill for the remains of 2 of the victims of an admitted serial killer. The province has outlined its plan for the search for the remains of Mercedes Myron and Morgan Harris. Minister Gary Anandasangari says the federal government is providing $20 million of the $40 million pledged for the search. He says it's going to be a challenging time for the families.
This is going to be a very painful process, right? I mean, the families have just come through an arduous trial, very traumatizing trial. I think any Canadian who's watching it or is following it knows how deeply hurtful it is. But as we look to the search, that's not going to be easy. That's also going to be very difficult.
Nandasangari says the Winnipeg police should have searched the landfill in the first place, not 2 years after the fact. Around 20 people of Manitoba Red River Métis descent learned about traditional foraging at Bel Air Provincial Forest. Métis herbalist Dana Wood taught them about sage and yarrow and dozens of other edible or medicinal plants with cultural significance. Wood wants to keep the traditional knowledge alive. The group found berries and dogwood. What they didn't find was edible mushrooms.
If we would have had some today, we would be cutting them open and I'd be explaining to people, how to identify them properly, how to prepare them and saute them properly. So that was really good in Métis culture. My grandma taught me that when I was very, very young.
Some of the participants said the experience helped them reconnect with their culture. And with the clock ticking down toward the parliamentary summer recess, the race is on to pass legislation that'll counter foreign interference at a federal level. And as we hear now from Janice McGregor, the House committee reviewing the bill has made some significant changes.
In the original draft of C-70, advocates already working on behalf of foreign governments wouldn't necessarily have had to report under the new Foreign Influence Registry that this bill creates to make foreign lobbying more transparent. But MPs on the Public Safety Committee voted to close this loophole. They also changed the nomination process for the commissioner that'll run the new registry. Both the House and the Senate will now vote. Their approval meant to keep this watchdog from looking like a lapdog picked by the Prime Minister.
If there are good faith amendments that are being proposed, I think it's important to be considering all of them, but it's also important to work with pace.
Justice Minister Arif Virani is among several ministers and top officials laying out the urgency of this bill for senators today. This committee study is running simultaneously to the Commons debate this afternoon. That will confirm these changes. Janice McGregor, CBC News, Ottawa.
And for news anytime, head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or use the CBC News app.
Thank you very much, Matt Humphrey.
Back soon.
Excellent. Riley Leschuk joins us now. Hello, Riley.
On a day where we could see some thunderstorms, Janet.
Oh, dear.
Across southern Manitoba.
Will they be severe?
We could see some thunderstorms severe in nature. The biggest risk of that happening kind of south of the Trans-Canada Highway into southeastern Manitoba this afternoon. We do have a pretty, I'll call it a high risk of some severe weather. Hail to the size of golf balls, potentially wind gusts 100 plus kilometers an hour, and the risk of a tornado, especially in that southeastern corner of the province. Doesn't mean any of this is going to happen, just that the ingredients are there and that the risk is there for some severe weather through the later afternoon hours. Other than that, a pretty widespread risk through the Westman region and into Winnipeg of some thunderstorm activity through the later afternoon and into the evening as well. We are seeing a few sort of scattered stray showers like we've kind of seen through the morning hours here in southern Manitoba. I know we did get a couple of little showers through the morning here in the Winnipeg region, but otherwise we're looking at a mainly sunny sky at the moment. Like I said, a few scattered showers, but as we get into what's ahead over the next couple of days, by the time we get to late afternoon, we do see that risk of a thunderstorm across southern Manitoba. Otherwise, a mainly clear night. Maybe a few scattered showers through the morning hours tomorrow once again and into the afternoon. Slim risk of a thunderstorm once again tomorrow, but otherwise we're looking at mix of sun and clouds throughout the day tomorrow and into Friday as well. Mainly sunny day ahead for most of us in Manitoba. Right now, 18 degrees in Winnipeg and Portage la Prairie, 21 in both Morden Winkler and Melita. Thompson's at 16, Churchill at 2 at the moment. We're looking at a high of 27 this afternoon in Melita. 24 in Brandon, 23 in Winnipeg. Risk of thunderstorms across southern Manitoba this afternoon. 18 in Dauphin and Gimli. Also 18 with a mainly sunny sky in Thompson. And really, we're looking at temperatures climbing as we get toward the weekend, Janet. 21 tomorrow with a chance of scattered showers. 26, though, for Friday. 24s and 25s for the weekend. Pretty much.
Yeah, that's lovely.
A couple degrees above.
Riley Lachuk, thank you so much.
No problem.
It is time now for our call-in conversation. The City of Winnipeg is looking for a new bus fare collection system to replace PAGO. You may have heard it on the news yesterday. It wants to hire a consultant to help choose this new bus fare collection system. They want Winnipeggers to weigh in. Kirk Cumming is manager of IT for Winnipeg Transit. He says the city wants to be sure it develops the right policies around fare collection and chooses the most appropriate technology.
We want to make sure that we're aware of the consequences of our decisions on all these different aspects of our operation. Some of those are our internal operational concerns, things like on-time performance, and some of those are the customer concerns, their customer satisfaction or equity. We may implement a certain technology that may take a certain amount of time when people board the bus. That then has the capacity to impact our on-time performance.
That's Kirk Cumming, IT manager for Winnipeg Transit, saying there are many new fare collection technologies for the city to consider. They could involve using credit or debit cards for payment or even a mobile phone app. It's a small step toward modernizing the way Winnipeg Transit operates. Today, on our call-in conversation, we are asking you, what's the problem with PAGO? What experiences have you had with the current system? And what else about Winnipeg Transit needs to modernize? The number to call to join this conversation is 204-780-0893. Again, 204-780-0893. Our guest today, joining us by Zoom, is Kyle Owens. Kyle is president of the public transit advocacy group Functional Transit Winnipeg. Thank you for being with us, Kyle.
Jen, you can hear me okay?
Yes, I think I can now. Your thumb might be on the microphone, but yes.
Fantastic.
I can hear you now.
Okay, there we go. I'll try that. Thank you.
Kyle Owens, what do you think about the city looking to replace PAGO?
I think it's a great idea. Winnipeg has had a lot of struggles with transit for a long stretch due to a lack of real investment in transit service and infrastructure. And being able to have a conversation about what we've learned from PAGO, about what we can take from that experience and move forward so that we can expand transit accessibility and convenience for everybody is so exciting.
For anyone listening who isn't familiar with the PAGO card, can you explain how it works?
Well, not is the short answer. It is intended to be an option for people to be able to pay for their transit fare. They can load money onto the card and then tap the card and on their go as an alternative to cash. The problem is that it takes a long time to load those funds onto the card. There are errors in the system. It is difficult to understand how to use, especially if you don't have internet access or other ways to add money to the card. It's very frustrating for so many people.
I know you can go into certain stores and hand them money and they'll load your card for you. But yes, to use it online, I've had the experience of loading the card and then 3 days later, you go on the bus and it says insufficient funds.
Exactly. And who knows where that problem is? It's so difficult to find the trail to figure out where the problem is. And although it is possible to go in person to load money, That is not a huge number of locations. And if you are someone with accessibility needs or mobility needs, that is a real barrier to not just using the system, but convenience. And so much of the system depends on it being convenient, easy to use.
Today on our calling conversation, we're asking you, what's the problem with PEGO? And what experiences have you had with that card that covers your bus fare or with Winnipeg Transit as a whole? How would you change the way you can pay for the bus? What else would you change about transit? We want to hear from you. 204-780-0893. 204-780-0893. Sandra has called us. Thank you, Sandra, for reaching out to Radio Noon. How are you?
Hi there. I'm fine, thank you. Is that Janet on the phone?
It is, actually.
Good.
Hi.
Okay. Hi. I'm fine.
I'm glad. What do you think about transit?
Well, first of all, I don't travel by transit myself.
Why not, Sandra?
Because I'm old and I've got a car.
You're old and you've got a car. And
yes.
if it were convenient enough, would you take the bus?
Oh, then I might, yes.
Okay.
Well, what I was just explaining was, in London, everybody travels on the bus without any fear of being macheted to death or hit with a hammer or being abused. And posh people go, everybody goes. You know, people traveling to Harrods, they go on the bus. Because older people get a bus for nothing. Now, I'm not suggesting that 55-year-olds get the bus for nothing, because they're probably still working, but maybe people over 75 or 70 or something could do that. So that's one thing. The other thing is, could they have a monthly pass for people who are paying, and they just simply show that card? Now, I don't know if that's the same as PEGO or not, but I think a monthly pass would be good, because people in England get a monthly pass. Or they just have a pass if they're old and they live within the district of Westminster, and they get there for nothing. So I'm not sure if that helps at all, but I do feel it's very sad. When I see a bus go by with two people in it, it's really sad.
I think there's probably a lot of people who would agree with you on loving the idea of having it free for older people if that was something that the city could do. I have to pick up on the first thing you said, though, Sandra. That involved fear, safety.
Yeah.
You could get on the bus without fear of being macheted to death.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
My heavens.
Yeah.
Why are you so fearful? Like, where do those images come
from? Well, I'm
from?
not fearful because I don't ride the bus.
No, but
I just think it's really sad when it seems like the driver can't do anything about it, which is a sad thing, really, you know.
It's and the news coverage that you've heard so many stories about.
That's right.
People being attacked on the bus.
That's right.
Even if you didn't have a car.
Well, if I didn't have a car, I guess I'd have to go on the bus.
Right. But at this point, you wouldn't feel safe.
Not really. No. I mean, apart from the fact that I do like to drive in my car and go wherever I want to, and I don't have to walk and wait at a bus stop for a bus. I mean, that's terribly elitist, I know, but that's just how it is. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm glad you called, and I don't think you have anything to apologize for.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to Kyle here for a second. How often do you hear of safety concerns?
I hear a lot of people who want to talk to me about concerns they have. Transit has what I call the plane crash problem. It only really makes the news when there's a problem, when something bad happens that draws attention. You only hear about those problems when they make the news. You don't hear about the tens of thousands of people who use the system every day without any issue or without any concerns about their well-being. Those concerns are very hard to address because they're concerns, right? They're amorphous, they're present, and though it's important to recognize people's feelings, if they're worried about something, we should have that conversation and talk about it.
I'm going to take a caller now. We've got Ron on the line, but Kyle, while I'm gone, I'm going to get you to kind of play with the way that your headphones are connecting with the computer. Maybe we can get a better connection. Oh, we think it's your internet. Ah, well, internet in Manitoba. Who's ever complained about that, huh? No one. Did I just get a little sarcastic on the air? I might have. Let's go to Ron now. Ron, thanks for calling Radio Noon. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm well. What's your experience with transit?
Well, I use transit primarily to go to sporting events. So I use the park and ride to go to Bomber games, and occasionally I will take it from where I live down to Jets games, and I usually get a ride home with a friend. At one point I worked downtown, and I would take it back and forth. However, waiting 3/4 of an hour for a bus at 10:30 at night wasn't my idea of a good time on Graham Avenue, so I just decided to start driving or take an Uber. The point I'd like to make about upgrades in technology is to have the service available using a smartphone. I can use the smartphone to pay for so many things. I don't know why Winnipeg Transit would require a proprietary card that was exclusive just to their service, that we couldn't have this through an existing or an app on your phone. I just think that we're not moving ahead. We're simply treading water with new tech, with rebuilding the existing technology. The second thing I wanted to suggest is that, and this is an experience I had in Portugal earlier this year, there was a device that, now it's different than Pago, but it had the same principle where you could go through any toll road and then you could also use it for parking. And I just think, forget the device, but the point about it was, why not have the Pago service also connected into parking lots? You'd get more people buying into acquiring the technology because they could use it for more than just simply the bus, which they might not take. They might also use it for parking. So those are a couple of suggestions I'd like to make, but I just think limiting it to buses is really backwards and really not moving forward. And it's got to be expanded to smartphones. They're ubiquitous. Yes, there are people without them. Yes, we should still make the card available for people who aren't comfortable with the technology or having their phone out. But I think that's the way to go.
You mentioned, of course, the parking lots or parking meters would be great. Something that's owned by the city. A lot of parking lots in the city are not owned clearly by the city of Winnipeg, so they'd have to figure some relationship out for that. Can I go back to the waiting at 10:30 at night on Graham Avenue? Did you ever have a safety issue or concern, Ron, when you were waiting for the bus?
And that would be why I took the Uber.
You did? Okay, you just didn't feel safe down there.
No, I'm by myself. I've been working at a sporting goods store located across from the MTS Center. The schedule was so bad that I had to wait for 3/4 of an hour because the bus would go by 5 minutes before I was off work. And the other option was to go down Portage Avenue and then transfer. All of that is a complete gong show. Why would I? So I essentially spend part of what I'd made that night on an Uber. Get home and not be very happy about the bus service.
No, but it works okay to get you to the Jets games.
Oh, I love it for the Jets games because parking down there is $16, $15, $20 a pop. If I can take the bus for $3 or $4 and then have my friend drive me home, it's a no-brainer. It drops me off on Graham, right behind the Jets, and it's terrific. I was at a concert in Berlin many years ago, and all you had to do was show your concert ticket on the tram, and it would take you to the event. Those are the kinds of things that expand people's interest and use of transit. If you could go to see a concert at the MTS Center and you knew that you could use your ticket to get onto a bus, you didn't have to pay for parking, a lot of people, I think, would find that to be a very attractive proposition.
I think you're right, Ron. Thank you very much for calling Radio Noon today.
You're welcome. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. So, Ron, they're calling in with some good ideas. What does that mean to you? If you were going to a concert at the Canada Life Centre downtown or doing something at the Forks, and you could buy a ticket that showed that you'd attended something and it covered your transit, Would you take transit there and back? And that could be a fee that gets built in. You pay for it with your ticket and you don't even see it. Tracy is calling now. Hi, Tracy. Thanks for reaching out to Radio Noon.
Hi there. I'm really interested in this topic. Like a previous caller, I'm transplanted here from the UK, but I've been here since '97. And when we go home to visit, like I'm really astounded at how inclusive the fare structures are at home for people who are on low incomes or for people who are over a certain age. And they also have a great structure for, that when you're not traveling during rush hour, that fares are cheaper. So after 9:30 or 9 o'clock, you can have a cheaper fare. And you can have that up until 3:30 and then after 6 again. Also, a lot of times those on very low incomes are able to access a much, much lower price for their passes and tickets. And I really don't understand why we're charging so much for people who are seniors and for children when we live in a province that has such inclement weather in the winter. We're really not making the fares accessible for them and making them, like, what's the harm in giving a child a 30-cent bus ticket ride? It would increase ridership and it would make sure more kids were seen.
Tracy, thank you for calling Radio Noon. Some great
You're
ideas
welcome.
there. Angela is on the line as well. Hi, Angela. Thanks for calling Radio Noon. What would you like to see change about Winnipeg Transit? Angela, are you there? Oh, dear. You know what? I jumped the gun on going to Angela, so I'm going to go to Kyle. Kyle Owen, what do you think? Could the city of Winnipeg afford lower fares, and would lower fares be attractive enough to get more people using transit?
One of the things that we really focus on is accessibility. And the fact is that cost is an accessibility issue. It is a barrier for a lot of people who want to access the transit system. But it's also true that a big portion of the current structure of Winnipeg Transit is in revenue. So if we lower that cost of the fare, it would require an additional investment from the city. We don't want to trade off lower fare for even worse service. The system is already not effective. And I want to circle back to two very quick things that were said earlier. When we talk about using an app on buses, that is now possible. In the last few weeks, Winnipeg Transit is now connected to every bus using an internet connection, which now allows us to have a live interaction with the internet on every bus, which makes that possible. And the other thing that we're hearing about is people traveling and seeing other systems. And it just amazes us when we go to other cities and we see what's possible, that transit can just work. It can just be there for us.
Let's go to Angela. Hi, Angela. I jumped the gun trying to get to you earlier. Sorry about that. Thanks for calling Radio Noon.
Hi, Janet. I want to suggest that there could be a card, a transit card, but rebrand it from Pago. There are a lot of people who are in low income, like the lady said, the older people, 55 plus should get on free, like in London. There's a lot of younger people who use it. When they go on there, they say, I don't have any money, and they get on there for free. There's some kind of a button on the machine that the bus driver can push for those people. They keep track of that. Or that's a rumor, I don't know. But rebrand the Pago card and do more PR on it, because not everybody has a bank card, not everybody has a credit card, and not everybody has a cell phone. So if you make it higher technology, it's going to make it obsolete for a lot of people who need to use the bus.
And we need to get rid of barriers as opposed to adding more. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
To get a handy transit or a possibilities thing, you have to go through a test at the Winnipeg Transit with their physiotherapist. And if you can walk from the building to the bus, then you don't get it. You don't get it unless you're deemed incapable of using the regular transit by a doctor by having neurological disorders like a stroke.
It's not easy to get.
No, or a disability, being in a wheelchair.
Angela, thank you so much for calling Radio Noon today.
You're welcome.
Kyle Owens is president of the public transit advocacy group Functional Transit Winnipeg. Okay, Kyle, what would you like to see change at Winnipeg Transit?
Janet, I'm so glad to hear about people talking about expanding transit access. What she said was so correct, that if you shift entirely to an app system, you would be excluding so many people who don't have not just access to those systems, but convenience to those systems. We should be having this conversation just like we're doing right now. And it's important to consult the people who aren't just using transit every day, but the people like our first caller who would like to, but there are barriers to them returning. And let's talk to the drivers. The drivers are the experts on transit. They see every day what people do or struggle with. Let's make sure that they're part of the conversation about what would make their job easier.
How often do members of your advocacy group actually connect with the city or with transit on issues?
We're on things like committees. We speak for City Hall. We try to sit down with city councilors as often as we can. And we just get together and talk about those interactions that we have, about what we've learned and what we're hearing and what we're trying to communicate. So the short answer is, as much as we can. We're very grateful for so many people sharing their stories and listening to us talk about the priorities of Winnipeg, getting better transit for everyone.
How do people connect with you if someone's listening and has a message that they would like to share?
They can go to our website at functionaltransit.com or send an email to contact@functionaltransit.com. We're on the internet. You can go to our site and our contact information is there, and we'll go from there.
How confident are you that the city is working to improve things?
The city is always working to make things better. The question is just, are we putting the right effort in the right place to make the most impact for Winnipeggers as quickly as possible? Transit is something that affects every person in the city, whether or not you're using transit. Even the people who don't get on a bus every day, they're affected by transit because it means fewer cars on the road, better infrastructure, less wear and tear. It affects all of us.
Kyle Owens, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Kyle Owens, as I mentioned, is president of the public transit advocacy group Functional Transit Winnipeg. If you have something you'd like to say about transit, remember you can always reach out to us and keep this conversation going. The number to leave a message is 204-788-3797. Faith Fundal joins us now in the studio. What's coming up on Up to Speed?
Hello, Janet. Still to come, a by-election that won't change the shape of government, but there is still much at stake. We're going to hear more about the by-election slated for the Tuxedo constituency. The CBC's Bartlett Kivas breaks down the history of the constituency and who has the most to lose if they lose.
Well, would it be... If I say anything more, I might give away one of the things. But wow, that would be such a coup if the NDP, working hard in that riding right now, campaigning hard, were actually able to take it away from the Progressive Conservatives of Manitoba. That would be huge news.
Lots of folks following it for sure.
Including Bartlett Kivas, and he'll join you today during Up to Speed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Faith Fundal hosting Up to Speed today between 3 and 6 p.m. You can listen on your CBC Listen app, on your CBC News app, on CBC Manitoba, right here at 89.3 FM 990 AM. Thank you to everyone who phoned in today. Thank you to everyone who's listening. We really appreciate connecting with you each and every day. That's made possible by Daniel Friesen, who's on the buttons today. He's making all the music happen on the controls. That's what Faith says. That always sounds so cool. Travis Peterson is bringing us to you on CBC Manitoba's YouTube page. Wendy Parker is taking care of talking to everyone and getting me all the information I need. Thank you so much, Wendy. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. We are here because of you. Thank you. Up next on the network, Writers and Company. Enjoy.